know, right?
Welcome to From Cover to Code, the Technology Book Club. Join us as we discuss artificial intelligence, DevOps, software development, cloud computing, and more. With your hosts, Angela Andrews and Michael Jenkins. The next episode of From Cover to Code starts now.
And we are live.
We are liver than live. Look at
Indeed.
us. Look at us. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Angela. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fabulous. Thank you for asking. What a day.
Yeah, I've been just ripping and running into this discussion, just like the 9 to 5 is 9 to 5. And so this is a good break to just, come together and chop it up about this book.
I love it. I love it. How do you want to start? I mean,
yeah, a lot was covered and maybe not covered in this book. We are talking about Hands-on Python for DevOps by Anchor Roy this season, and it's been a very interesting ride. Before we get into the book, let's just welcome everybody to the studio.
Welcome.
Thanks for joining us live on YouTube. Thanks for joining us live on LinkedIn. Or if you are listening to us or watching us after the fact, thank you, friend, for joining us.
Thank you.
On your pod reader or podcaster, YouTube, LinkedIn, so on. We're happy to have you.
Indeed. Well, now that we got the niceties out the way, definitely welcoming our viewers and our soon to be viewers. We are deep into this book, and I do mean deep. This week we are covering chapters 7 and 8, and they have been we are on a roller coaster ride, y'all.
Yeah.
And I wait until we get into it.
I know. Just like a roller coaster, we have been through some highs and some lows. Let me tell you.
Yes, indeed. And Mike has notes.
Prolific. I was just like hacking away at the key. Have you seen that meme of Kermit when he's at the typewriter? He's just like,
yeah.
What? That's how I was as I was reading and I was taking my notes. Yeah. So yeah, I got some notes to go through.
All right.
Let's just jump right into it then. If you're watching us live, feel free to follow along in the comments. If you got notes that you want to share, if you want to shout out, join the discussion.
Please
let us know where you're joining us from. Yeah, just follow along. We'll be following along in the comments. Chapter 7, automating tasks.
Yes.
One thing that I did to your benefit, Angela, was I started looking at the quotes at the beginning of the chapter.
Did you?
Yeah, I did. As we were reading along, or as I was reading along in the previous chapters, I was just kind of blazing past that text at the beginning of the chapter.
Yeah.
But I did make note of them, so I'll read the first one if you don't mind.
Please.
Chapter 7 starts with the quote, "The goal of the future is full unemployment so that we can play," by Arthur C. Clarke. The way that I took that comment was we should be using automation to basically automate our jobs away.
That part.
Yeah. So just like get to the point where the robots and the computers and the processes, the Lambda functions, they're doing all the work. So we could just sit back and chill.
Now, to that quote's credit, the author of said quote also wrote 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yep.
So he is this futuristic writer who writes from this very interesting perspective. So if we are to believe the future and automation is going to be more prolific throughout our lives, we should embrace it. And we should want, automation to come in and kind of take over so we can have time to chillax and read a good book and drink a good wine and travel. And it sounds, the quote sounds kind of asinine, but when you think about how fast technology is moving now, being able to automate even the smallest piece of it releases some time for you to do other things.
Yeah.
So I get the spirit of the quote. I do.
Yeah. And the author goes on to talk about how we've been using automation throughout time in farming, travel, the industrial revolution, and computing. And he was saying that we're automating away the menial mental workload so that we can free up our brain for more leisurely tasks. And I thought about that, and I was thinking about AI and how we're using AI now, but I kind of reframed it to think about it frees up our mind for more innovative tasks, because the robots and the machines, they can automate the menial tasks, they can do the day-to-day, but they can't innovate to that next step. They can't give us that genuinely human process or feature that says, hey, this will be better if, or why don't we try this differently this way, something like that.
I totally agree. Again, the way he kicked off the chapter was, talking about the hunter-gatherers, how we moved from that way of living to farming, which was supposed to be less work, but then the Industrial Revolution came and it automated other processes, the manufacturing process. And it was the quote in the book was, computers have turned the human brain into the most efficient tool in the world. And you mentioned it, the menial stuff. That's what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to do the mundane and the constantly, when you do like this, you just that might be something that you might need to automate, right? To give yourself a little break from it. Do you believe that computers have made the human brain more efficient, though? That's my question to you.
I disagree. I honestly disagree. I think, well, I don't know. I have thoughts, I would say.
Oh, I have let me hear one of your thoughts, because I have thoughts too.
Yeah, first of all, phone numbers and directions. We can't call anybody without pressing their icon or their number in our phone because we've forgotten the phone numbers, and we can't get anywhere within, like, if it's past a mile from our house, we can't get there unless we put in the GPS or Google Maps or Apple Maps if you're iPhone, whatever. So that's definitely one way where I feel like we have lost capacity due to dependency on machines.
Well, I agree. Definitely the whole tapping into that long-term memory. We can't remember phone numbers, directions. I can't even go to my mailbox without Waze telling me which way to go. Like, I'm trying to avoid Atlanta traffic at all costs. So, I think I get a reprieve because of where I live. But also think about calculators and how they kind of automated, in some respects, the ability to do mathematics or advanced mathematics, with a piece of paper and a pencil. Think Katherine Johnson in Hidden Figures. Shout out, she's up there, one of my Barbies. Think about that. We can't remember phone numbers. We can't remember a book that we just read. We're not converting things into that long-term memory, and we're not tapping into recalling said things. I think we consume so much. It's almost like when you're standing in front of a fan and everything is kind of blowing past you. That's basically how we are. We're not stopping to consider or reconsider or question or have thoughts or take notes. And that part right there makes me sad. Like, I think all of us, like, I'm talking about me, but I'm talking about you too. We're all kind of victim to that, because of how much information that has been automated in such a way that we can be faced with so much of it that we lose some of the skills and habits that we had a mere 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, no, Agree. And I mean, that's probably a good segue into the task that the author chose to discuss in this chapter, automating stuff, automation of server maintenance within the server and outside of it, automation of container creation through managed services and otherwise, and automating launching of a playbook using Google Forms, which is bananas to me, but we'll talk about that in a minute. As I started reading this chapter, he gave the example of a friend or coworker whose only task, their job, was to like basically reboot servers or patch servers, something along those lines. And I actually resonated with that because I have a testimony to share, story time to share.
All right,
basically
now.
the similar situation, and I'll keep it brief. But I was working at a media company, and we had servers that basically served magazine content, right? These were running on, it was some older Red Hat operating system, and we were running WebLogic as the web server. My job was to keep the servers up and running, keep the processes up and running. I didn't care about the content, but lo and behold, these WebLogic servers would like kind of crap out. The servers are still up. The web server itself is still up, but they're not serving anything. They're serving blank pages, right? So the people who manage the actual application, they were in London, and here I am in Southern California. So they would call me when they got to work and say, hey, the servers are down, and so they're waking me up in the middle of the night saying, hey, do what you got to do, reboot basically to get these servers back up. So I would sleepily log in, reboot, make sure everything came up, and go back to bed. And of course, with this disturbing me all these months or whatever, I was like, there's got to be a way to automate this. It was a very, very convoluted process to restart these servers because there was all these different steps. So, but I was able to automate it. I actually use Perl for that particular process. I know, but so whenever they called me now, I was like, okay, and I would press a button basically, and the script would go and reboot everything. But then I was like, you know what? There's got to be an even better approach to it. So then I was able to automate a solution ahead of that checked everything out. And before they got to work, so like I
awesome.
had a cron job. Exactly. It's like, hey, check out these servers, check out these sites. If they're serving blank pages, guess what? Reboot. If not, everything's good, So that's just like, I totally understood the example that he was giving, where you can use automation to benefit your life, particularly if you're trying to get some sleep.
That is the best reason. I mean,
yeah,
nobody wants to be awakened by a phone call or a text or anything like that because of something as mundane as what you just said. And the fact that you were able to automate it away, that's what we all strive for. If we're being honest, that's what we all strive for. So that was a good example in your own life of how you were able to do that. What about the example in the book where he was talking about automation of server maintenance and patching? What were your thoughts on that?
I appreciated that particular example, and he gave examples for connecting to AWS, GCP, using the Boto library. The only note that I had for the actual text of the book was there was a typo in the code. So if you were just like picking up this code to drop it in and run it, and I copied it out of the book. I didn't go to the repo to actually see if the repo was updated.
Right.
But the code in the book, there was a typo in it. No big deal there. But I did think that was a good example to show that, hey, you can use Boto library, connect to AWS, and just say, hey, give me all the servers, all the EC2 instances, and then you could use that information to automate some processes. I've done that dozens of times, or probably more times than I can count. So yeah, I was totally able to relate to that example.
For sure. Of course, if you're in AWS, there are services that will do that for you, like Runbooks and Systems Manager. I was the typo. It happens. No one's perfect. But why were there two scripts in one code block? I was flummoxed. I said, who does that? But I gave him a pass. Again, we're all human. But that was a great use case, the one that he mentioned about the server maintenance, that could be turned into so many different things. I would say that is probably one of the more useful functions that Python is capable of doing.
Sure.
We've seen some ones that were like, I don't know if, but that one is, I will give him props on that one. The patching one, what did you think?
Patching, I didn't really care for it too much. I ran, well, let me take that back. Let me be true to my notes here.
Okay.
I appreciated that he introduced the platform library. It's if I understand, it's a native library in Python that you can use to get information about the system where the script is running. And based on that, you can, change the behavior of the script based on the operating system.
Right.
Like the script can say, hey, I'm running on Windows, so I'm going to do Windowsy stuff. I'm running on Linux, so I'm going to do Linuxy stuff, right? I ran into a problem where that particular library, or one particular call from that library, was deprecated in Python 3.5 and then completely removed in Python 3.8. So I like to run on the cutting edge. So I'm running like Python 3.13, So of course I ran into that error, and I threw this over to ChatGPT, and I'm like, hey, what's up with this error, man? The code looks good. And that's where I got the information that I just shared about the deprecation and the removal. And it suggested another library, the distro library.
Okay.
It is external, so I had to pip install it as opposed to running with the native library. The other option was setting the script to read etc OS release directly to get the information, but that only works on Linux platform. So it doesn't make it a truly platform agnostic script.
Exactly. And there are other tools that are better suited for that. Hello, Ansible. Like,
that's the first tool that came to mind.
Me too. Well,
I already know.
That was definitely the first thing that came to my mind. But I did like the cool soda analogy and likening it to the soda wars. It was just a little banter in the beginning of the this section. Coke versus Pepsi, Ubuntu versus RHEL, SUSE versus and I'm thinking like when you have multiple OSs to support, you have to find ways to differentiate them. And in that case, his script was supposed to do something like that. We know Ansible has modules that do things like that. That is a function of most of our jobs at one point, having to patch systems of different OS types, different versions or whatever. And the best way that we do it in AWS right now, specifically, is properly utilizing tags. Tags. I'm gonna scream that from the rooftop to target specific resources for patching for a myriad of behaviors. Tags. So I kind of appreciated that one too.
Cool. And the last example, no, I shouldn't say last. The next set of examples,
it was last.
Yeah, with the containers and the Kubernetes.
It was last in my mind. Yes.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, that's where I'm headed right now. So the next one that he demonstrated was automating container creation, specifically creating a Docker image using a Python script. And when I read that, it was a WTF moment. Because I'm like, Docker itself, by definition, has a medium that you can use to totally describe everything that you want in your Docker container. But I was like, okay, I'm going to walk with you. Let's just see.
Yeah.
And if I could take something away from it, I was like, okay, maybe this might be useful if you have some sort of like super crazy complex logic to build one-off or very, very specific images based on some sort of input. So you need to be much more dynamic.
I could see that.
Than creating just a static Docker file or generating the Docker file or whatever the case is. So maybe I'll allow it in that case, but just out of the gate, just like, I need to create a container image that starts with Ubuntu, which is usually like that from statement. It's the very first line in a Docker file. And then you run the commands that are native to the operating system that the base image is using to do what you got to do. Scripting that would be a waste of time.
Okay. We are of one accord.
Okay.
I'm like, the minute it's like install Docker, well, I don't need you at this point. I have everything I need right now. I thought, I mean, I guess it's a great example. You gave an amazing example where it's something so bespoke and so different that you need that logic from Python to be able to trigger off a very specific whatever. I can't see it any other way. Podman, Docker. No, that is what does it say? When you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yeah.
Calm down, Python. Calm down. There are other tools that can take care of this much better than you. And I just named 2 of them. So again, we're kind of harping on that part. But it is interesting to know just how flexible and extensible Python is. We're learning its boundaries, its limits, and or lack thereof. Like it can do anything at this point. You keep reading this book, and you're going to probably run across a couple more. You can do that, but why would you?
Yeah, that part. Now, I could think of a case where I might use Python for sort of interacting with Docker from a DevOps-y sort of position. And I think a great example for this would have been like, look at all the images that I have on my local system. And if there are any images that are out of date, then pull them down, just kind of like a refresh command or something. I don't know if Docker has that built in. I know that you can Docker pull, an image. And if it's not newer than what you have locally, it will pull it. But, hey, Python, give me a report that says, hey, you have these images on your system and these are out of date. These are the ones that you should pull. Okay. And hey, do you want me to pull them? Then yeah, sure. Maybe you have a yes or no prompt, and then you hit whatever you want to hit, and it does the thing.
That's a great case.
Yeah, I think that would have been a good example. But I'm not going to say I digress, because I don't digress.
Not
off
at
of this
all.
example.
Not at all.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on. The next one, he spun up a Kubernetes cluster in GCP and Azure.
Honey, I shan't. I was just like,
yeah.
There was and this, to be clear, this was the chapter where he didn't warn you with technical requirements first. Okay. Yes. So I was just, when he started talking about Kubernetes, I was like, wait a minute. Are you like, where you do that at? You didn't warn us. You didn't give us a heads up. Nothing. So I was very disappointed. I did not bother doing that one. I wasn't going to spin up a Kubernetes cluster for that very mundane sample 2 code snippet. It's great to know that you can, whatever it is he was trying to do here. Creating a Kubernetes cluster usually involves using it in a cloud service. For this exercise, we're going to write code for setting up a cluster in GCP and Azure. So he had us cloud hopping, It's great that you can, but no, it's a no from me.
Yeah. Yeah, same. And again, this is me trying to find the silver lining in the cloud. For pun implied.
We were gung ho for this book. We were gung ho for this book.
Yes.
You know what I mean? We were like, this is gonna be that girl.
I'm still hopeful.
Good. Yeah,
I'm still hopeful. It might be worthwhile, the demonstration that he gave, as the seed for, say, if you have an internal platform and you need to create clusters on demand, again, with very specific needs that require some sort of business logic.
Okay.
And you implement that business logic in Python. Maybe I don't know, somebody says, oh, I need a cluster that has these capabilities in XYZ. And so the script takes that as an input and says, okay, I'm going to start your cluster on Azure, or, oh, I'm going to start your cluster on GCP. And then it gives you the endpoint or whatever credentials you need to connect to it. And boom, there you go. Outside of something like that, I would think number one, be better off using infrastructure as code to deploy your Python or deploy your cluster on your platform of choice. And then if you're operating locally, use something like Minikube or OrbStack or Kind or Podman or Docker Desktop. They all have Kubernetes stuff like built into it for local stuff. I mean, that's not cloud based, but that's like just another thought that I had going into that. So
Good idea.
yeah, Python might not be the right tool for this one out of the box, but it could be applied in
Oh, for
certain
sure.
other areas. Yeah.
Python can do a lot as we're learning. So again, we're not bashing the author.
Mhm.
We are learning about more and more capabilities that Python had that we weren't privy to until we started reading it and said, it can do that. And then you have your thought like, well, should it do that? You know?
Right.
So there, yeah, it's eye-opening. That's the word.
Yeah.
Each use case that the author presents, for me especially, maybe not so much for you, but definitely for me, it's eye-opening to understand and learn more about the possibilities and the functionality that Python has. So yeah.
Totally
What do we
agree.
think? What do we think about that last ditty? Ooh.
The last one was another. I literally put, you see, if you're watching along, I have my hand on my head in the face palm emoji position.
He's a face palm emoji.
And I was
Johnny.
like, okay, let me take a step back so you know where I'm coming from. The demonstration is automated launching of playbooks based on parameters using a Google form to collect the parameters and launch AWS EC2 instances. Now, I had to step back.
Wait. Was it AWS or was it? It was AWS.
It was AWS, but he used Google App Script as the bridge between the form and AWS Lambda. So on the one hand, I had to give him a just like standing ovation, slow hand clap. Because I'm like, boy, you are like tying all these technologies together and you are really, really building a demonstration that shows all the possibilities. But then as somebody who knows the complexities of creating resources, managing state, permissions, all this other stuff that you need to take into account as you create and manage services and resources in the cloud, I was like, oh my God. I was like, why would this be a demonstration? But I was here for it because again, I was like, show me, please.
How about
how you create a form connected to an app script, use that app script to trigger a Lambda function that launches an EC2 instance. I'm game. So yeah, I definitely wanted to check it out.
This was more of what's possible. This is definitely just more of what is possible with Python, and the use cases are seemingly endless at this point. We're coming on another example where you're like, wait, what? It does that? Like, so again, Python is such a powerful language that has the fact that it has the ability to do all the things that the writer is suggesting is pretty impressive.
Yep. This would have been a case where I would have broken out SAM CLI to deploy the Lambda function. I skipped it though because I didn't want to do the other parts. I didn't want to mess around with app script. I didn't want to mess around with the Google form. And again, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I was just hesitant because number one, there's no permissions on that form. If I built this form and then it's out there, I share it with you and somebody captures that email or the case is, they're launching EC2 instances in my account all day. You know, this is like, what's going on there? And then also there was no state management. And these are all my notes, my personal thoughts here, like no state management. So after you let that user create that instance, how do you delete it? How do you manage it? You know, after it's out there alive and run around in the wild. So, but again, finding the silver lining in this particular example, I thought this approach, it might be applicable for other platforms like Firebase or for app. I forget the name of the AWS service where you're basically like, it's hosted applications, but anything that you could put Cognito, Beanstalk might work as well. Anything that can give you some sort of application front where you can put some permissions in front of it to say like, hey, log in first so I know who you are and I know that you have permission to do what I'm about to allow you to do. And then, okay, now I know how to take that front, you know, trigger some Lambda function and that Lambda function does some stuff. I think that was probably the best takeaway from this example.
Well, in the summary, the author ties it up pretty nicely here about automation and life in general. He's such the philosopher, I have to say. A life is not meant for boring, repetitive tasks. It is meant for exploration. Automation is key to free up time for exploration. You control your life by controlling your time. Automation lets you do that.
Mm-hmm.
In a nutshell, that's
In a nutshell.
that's what he is explaining to us that we can do with our
Yeah.
lives and our jobs.
Yeah, and I agree. I agree. Yeah.
Nice. So, are we ready to move on? Chapter 8.
I think we're ready to move on to chapter 8.
We
Chapter
beat
7 to bed.
We beat it. Yes, let's move on.
Indeed. Chapter 8, understanding event-driven architecture, was the next point of discussion. And if you don't mind if I take the chapter quote from this one again, because
Please.
I actually had to do some research on this one.
And you needed a translator.
Yes, I am not going to attempt the Spanish at all. My accent, I would stumble across these words. But the translation that the author provided was, it will be seen in the frying of the eggs. And that's spoken by Miguel de Cervantes from Don Quixote. I chat GPT'd it. I was like, what is the point of this particular quote? Chat came back and said, he's trying to make a point that the truth or outcome of something will be clear later when it actually happens, not before. And it's a metaphor for proof through action and results, not promises or theories.
Okay.
So I took that. Yeah, I took that to mean, like, we're talking about event-based stuff, right? So you set up this thing, whatever the thing is, or multiple things, but they don't do anything until the eggs are fried, until that event happens, So you can have all these eggs, but you're not going to know if these eggs are going to fry or how they're going to fry up until you actually crack one and throw it on a skillet. And that's the event that happens.
He basically talks about life and how events happen. And there is an end result to a bunch of different events. That story that he tells and that analogy tees up event-driven architecture pretty interestingly, very interesting. So in this chapter, he gave us the technical requirements again, which I do appreciate. Like, let me know what I'm getting myself into. So hat tip for bringing that back for this chapter. So what he talked about, introducing PubSub and employing Kafka with Python using the Confluent Kafka library. All right, let me stop you right there. The first code example is looking for the name of a Kafka cluster, right? Does anyone have one of those lying around that is not doing something very important? I don't have one lying around. Do you?
I do not. I don't have a spare Kafka cluster to lend.
I don't feel so bad. So anyway, this chapter, so we can paint the picture for what we're reading through, is the basic concepts behind the use of PubSub. That's something, an architecture pattern that is very popular. The general concept behind loosely coupled architecture and why Python is so well suited for that, and the industry standard of breaking down monoliths into smaller components. We are all about moving away from the complex to the coupled to what? There's complexity. There's always going to be complexity, but into smaller, more manageable components.
Yeah,
that's what I wanted to say. So, thoughts on the beginning of the chapter? What are you thinking?
Yes. Well, first of all, I'm starting in the section where it's the basic concepts behind and use of publisher, subscriber, or PubSub architecture. I'm familiar with Apache Kafka. I know systems that use it. I was not aware that it was open sourced by LinkedIn in 2011. I appreciated him sharing that nugget. So I actually now want to go back and do some research on the origins of Kafka and how it was developed at LinkedIn and why they chose to open source it. So yeah, that's one. It doesn't have anything to do with Python per se, but I'm just curious to learn more about that.
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
Do you think it was made mention in the DevOps handbook and we didn't catch it? Because there were a lot of LinkedIn use cases. Could this have been one? Like, I don't know, but the fact that you mentioned, well, it was mentioned in the book, which was a great fun fact. I'm curious to start there. I would definitely like, if it's on your Kindle, search for it. Like maybe it's in there somewhere.
Yeah, I'll definitely go back and take a look for that too. I also appreciated that he introduced the Confluent Kafka library. So it's another, purpose written library. It wasn't a native library to Python, but a purpose-built library for interacting with Kafka, endpoints from Python. But as you mentioned in his demo, he assumed that you already have a Kafka service up and running that you can connect to. That probably should have been one of the technical requirements if he's listing, these requirements.
I agree.
And but along those lines, and maybe this is in the repo. I didn't go to the repo to check for this one. If he had a Docker file where you could spin up a Kafka system locally, or a CloudFormation template, so you could spin one up in AWS or something like that. I think that would have been helpful to kind of keep the reader focused on the demo, maybe even getting more hands-on with the demo, other than putting the book down, picking up another book on how to install and run Kafka, and then coming back maybe a week later for this example. That I'm sorry, y'all.
All that book learning just
just for one demo,
Yikes.
But you would be great on Kafka, and I've seen some really good Kafka demonstrations out there.
Okay.
But yeah, it was good to see how you can create the publisher and subscriber in Python and how they interact.
The next section after the pub subsection is called Understanding the Importance of Events and Consequences. And it made me think about there are always consequences for no matter what happens, no matter what you do. You've seen many a meme on social media about the consequences of your actions, events, whatever. And it just made me laugh because the wording is so on brand with FAFO and all other things like that.
Yes, very much so.
I can find humor in just about anything, and I found humor in that section of the book. So there's that little piece, that little nugget. So the first, we're off of Kafka. Moving on.
The next one, he was exploring loosely coupled architecture. Yes. Now for this one, I did find a link to season 1. Shout out to the DevOps handbook, because he mentions, the author in this particular book, Hands-on Python for DevOps, mentions the Toyota way.
Yes.
And you may recall that in the DevOps handbook that they talked about the Toyota production system, lean manufacturing concepts like minimizing waste and so on. And I'll read the quote here from the book directly so I don't mess it up. He says, instead of worrying about every single little thing before you even start implementing the system, you can just start implementing and worrying about optimization later. This is perfect for someone like me who uses this approach for practically everything. And it's the same for some of the biggest companies in the world as well. If you've heard of the Toyota way, it essentially follows the same principle, making mistakes and learning from them to get better. So yeah, I thought that was a good place to drop that if we're talking about
for sure.
Automation, event-driven architecture, just starting, get something on paper, optimize it later. Well, and I guess I like the engineering phrase, make it work and then make it pretty. There's always time to, or down the road, you can find some time to optimize and make things, more efficient, but you just got to get started somewhere.
I agree. So that was a good one. In this chapter, it was, he used an analogy of his personal life about serendipitous events of his life, meeting other people from his home country, Nepal, and he was talking about, was this luck? Was this luck? But luck is, his quote was, luck is simply the amalgamation of one's sustained attempts. And to parrot what you said, sometimes you can get lucky, right, on that first go around. As long as you're trying and doing that might be, it's never enough, but just to say I've done something, you keep trying, stuff is going to happen. And then it goes into the end of the quote. You're talking about don't be afraid to fail and go with the flow. Something like that, something about going with the flow. And then he said, God hates a coward. Like, don't be no coward, just do it real. And then make it pretty later, because now you've done it. You've gotten the reps in, you've learned something, and you were able to produce something. So failure teaches us the weaknesses and shortcomings of the system. That's which can be worked on quickly, because you are only working in that isolate. Oh, I'm getting my quotes mixed up. So there's one quote, the beginning of the quote about failure teaches us the weakness and shortcomings of our system. And then when we're talking about decoupling monoliths, when you are dealing with something in a monolith, it's usually a much smaller piece of the puzzle, that isolated component. And you can kind of fix that in your silo. There's probably some redundancy somewhere down the line. And then he goes into the killing your with the strangled fig. Like, this was an emotional roller coaster. This book kind of went all over, but that's fine. I was able to keep the thread. What were your thoughts on, we didn't get to the next piece of code, but I think the story is right before for the monolith
story. I don't have my digital copy because
that's okay.
I never got my paper copy to flip through. I guess the only other thought that I had on the last section before we move on to the monolith stuff was I was hoping for another opportunity to break out the SAM CLI, and I just knew it was going to come in this particular chapter. And he mentioned where the example that he gave for loosely coupled architecture was using an S3 event to trigger a Lambda function to resize images, which is a classic example, I might add, for event-based, demonstrating event-based systems. But I mean, I just felt like there were some pieces missing as far as like maybe a SAM template that would create the bucket. And also, create the function or put the function in place for you along with that code. So I didn't do the exercise. I did read through the code, and it was worthwhile to see that.
Sure.
And also to just understand, that flow. I did bounce this off of, I think I might have bounced this off of Claude instead of ChatGPT. But I was like, hey, give me an example of this. And it actually did. I didn't even ask it for a SAM template. It gave me a SAM template.
It knows you by now.
I know, right?
There's no secrets.
It's like, okay, let me just help you out, my friend. Here's your SAM template. Now go play. And basically, but I was interested in the demonstration or the example that the AI generated, because it put a queue between the bucket and Lambda. So it was already adding more capability to this decoupled system, because what if this bucket is overloading your Lambda functions? How? Well, if you put that queue in the middle there, then you've got another system that will buffer all of these requests from S3, and then dole them out to the Lambda functions, whatever your you may have limited the expansion of number of Lambda functions that you have. So it'll wait until Lambda functions pick up the next event and process it, and then just kind of dole them out that way. I thought that was a really I would not have thought to put a queue in that demonstration, but that was like, it perfectly fit into the whole loosely coupled architecture conversation.
Nice.
Yeah.
So now what? What do we want to wax poetic about strangling figs? Strangler figs? I'm sorry.
We're not strangling any figs here.
We will do no such thing. No, we will not.
Okay. But we will talk about, I guess, the strangler fig approach to killing a monolith.
Tell everybody what that is.
Yeah. So basically, and let me I will read directly from the author one more time.
Okay.
It's basically changing your system from within while maintaining the same functionality or increasing functionality. It's the breaking of the monolith into loosely coupled architecture. And I think, did we talk about Strangler Fig in season 2?
I think so.
I think we might have had some discussion there. But basically, it's the Strangler Fig is a vine that grows on other stuff, and it like slowly kills off the stuff that it's clinging to, so that it can thrive. And so we as software architects can use this approach to slowly decouple things from a monolith and thrive outside of it, and while the system is still running. So you're still keeping the same functionality, but you're changing the components while you're going along.
And there's a nicer word that the author uses as opposed to the Strangler Fig methodology. It's digital transformation.
There you go.
And that's that's all the rage. It is another buzzword, and he actually makes mention of that. But modernizing your architecture does transform you. It can't help but. It will transform the way that you deploy code. No more waterfall, definitely more agile. It transforms the way teams work together. There has to be less silos when you're dealing with this type of architecture, because everybody has their skin in the game, right? Your DBAs have a skin in the game, your front end, your back end, your security, everybody. So the term digital transformation, it's a little tiresome because we hear it so much, but people are still in the process of transforming digitally as we speak. They're trying to modernize applications that have been running on-prem for 20 years, whatever, using backends and stuff that, some people coming up in technology may never have even heard of, but they are integral to their business, right? So if you can, do this, go from these monoliths to these loosely coupled architecture, by all means do. But that's not to say that every architecture is capable of such things. But as we can see, once we take a look at one of his little drawings, anything's possible, even the smallest.
Yeah. Indeed, and I guess that is the takeaway from this particular chapter, as we kind of go into what the one demo that I have, because there was no code associated with the discussion around the monolith deconstruction or whatever, or going to microservices. I think that would have been another great opportunity to show. Even I'm just trying to think of what a just like a toy monolith might have looked like with Python. Again, maybe if this is something you could implement with the SAM CLI, have a database, a front end, and a back end, 2 functions and a database. And, maybe they're all, I don't know, that's not right. A VM starting with, all the code kind of inside the VM, and then you break it out into Lambda functions and the database, everything separate. I think that could have presented a good example for this.
Maybe in the second edition, who knows?
Perhaps.
Well, once we said that we were reading this book, the author kind of liked our post or whatever. So maybe they're listening and they want to see what we're talking about. And that is definitely one thing that could make it to the second edition.
Yes.
To make it so much more robust. This is a nice foundation. There's, it can only go up from here.
Yeah, no doubt. And I didn't want this particular hour episode to go by without a demonstration, because I love my slides. I love my demos.
I love your slides.
So yeah, I had to pull something together for this, and I appreciated the discussion. So I thought it was it warranted sharing with you listeners and watchers this discussion on breaking down the monolith. So the first image that he shares, and I'll put a link to this in the show notes so that all the folks that are listening later in audio, you can get these. But basically, he's showing how there's this box, right? On one side, there's a user. On the other side, there's a database. And inside this box is everything. It's the user interface. It's the logic between the data operation and then some miscellaneous other kind of functionality or code just kind of thrown in. And then on the next image, he shows the first stage of decoupling this monolith into its components that are separated. Mm-hmm. So we still have this box, the user's on one side and the database is on the other side, but then below the box are these miscellaneous functions, miscellaneous 1, miscellaneous 2, and they're interacting with the box itself, the user interface, the data ops portion of the code, or whatever the case is. So we've seen how like that miscellaneous function has been pulled out of the box. And then finally, however many iterations it takes, we get to the final state where everything is kind of its own component. The user is still on the left, database is far on the right. And in between them, we have the user interface, which is in its own little box. It can interact with its own little functions. And in between the front end and this data logic is some sort of buffer or API, or maybe it's a queue or something like that, showing how those systems connect to each other. And then that data portion has its own little functions that it can call. And the data thing is the only thing that's connected to the database on the far right-hand side. So that's where the, at this state, the monolith has been completely decoupled. The fig has been strangled, or whatever you want to call it. And everything is complete. So I thought that was good that he brought this particular, these diagrams to the book as a part of the discussion. Would have been cool to see a demonstration in code, maybe the different steps of this particular process.
Well, this decoupling a monolith is taking the old and turning it into the new. And it is a process. You start with the lowest hanging fruit, the things that are most malleable that you can kind of extract, and you move from there. And, all new functionality, you make sure that it is loosely coupled. You build that way. And then the things that are much more difficult, have much more complexity to them, or much more sensitivity to them, you get to them when you can. So these two chapters, there was some good anecdotes. The theory about the decoupling the monolith is always a good conversation because it's a pattern. It's a pattern that we are seeing more and more. People are still in the process of their digital transformation, and this is a huge part of it. So I'm glad he touched on it and talked about it.
Yeah, indeed. And I think we'll see more of that even as we go forward. Like I remember, my goodness, 5-6 years ago. Well, I mean, technology has its, what I want to say, like its waves of different trends or, changes and that type of thing. We went from, servers on in the data center to cloud. And now we're going through like this AI transformation. But I think whatever it is, there's always something that's kind of old. It's always something that's kind of like, it's a monolith. It's all in one box. And it takes somebody that has the skill or the foresight or the knowledge that knows these techniques, like the, how to decouple a monolith, to break those boxes down into their individual components. So they're a little bit easier to manage so that they can be modernized or updated. I can only imagine how many people are still out there running on WebLogic, the software that I talked about earlier in the show. It's like, man, come on. There's so many. Well, I mean, perhaps WebLogic is. I haven't looked at WebLogic in a long time.
Don't. It's still there. Don't.
Yeah, I know it's still there.
Don't worry, it's newer. People are still using it.
Yeah, and I'm talking about like old versions of WebLogic that you could probably get off of and use some newer technology. So, yeah, we got to modernize, people. It's always going to be there. So
that's true.
AI is not going to take that away from us.
Are you looking forward to the next two chapters?
Let me bring that up on.
Please do.
The next two chapters 9 and 10, using Python for CI/CD pipelines and common DevOps use cases in big companies. Okay.
Calm down. Don't get excited.
No, before I say this, because we talked about in the last episode, coming into this particular episode, I was excited about the event-driven architecture. I wanted to get back to SAM CLI. And maybe I will with some of the demonstrations that the author presented, but I didn't, for whatever the case is. So me and my just appreciation for CI/CD. and the pipelines thereof. So I'm excited to see what the author shares, but at the same time, I'm going to temper my excitement. I'm going to go in with very limited expectations and I just want to open my mind to receive what the author is presenting.
Very good. Very good. So
Yeah.
I will tell you in the summary at the end of the chapter, he did do a preface. There will be more hands-on with Python in the following chapters. So you may get what you're asking for. You're going to learn about the role that Python can play in CI/CD. He said it's a fun topic that will help you implement the Python skills and concepts you've been studying in this chapter. So let's see what we got. I am open to every chapter. They're more eye-opening. You can do that? Like that's literally how I am experiencing the chapters. So as I'm not a developer, my Python skills have waned tremendously. Everything I write probably comes from someone else's code, and then I get my boy Claude or Chat to be like, "Hey, let's see what we can do here." So I'm not even going to lie, but I'm always hopeful. I'm always excited to see what we got going. And chapter 9 starts with a Michael Jordan quote. So hold on.
Okay, I'll be looking forward to that.
From the GOAT next week.
I know. Okay, cool. Well, thank you all for joining us for this particular episode of From Cover to Code. If you're listening along, this is your first time joining us, you can find us on YouTube. You can find us on LinkedIn. And yeah, you can shout us out on all of the social interwebs using the hashtag Cover to Code.
Yes,
and
indeed.
We're just happy to have you with us.
We are very happy that you ride along with us. This is two friends who love to read, who love the opportunity to learn, and to have you along learning and enjoying it with us is definitely one of the high points of us getting together every week. So thank you.
Yes, indeed. Shout out to Benjamin Branch. He did join us earlier in the show and said howdy. So thanks, Benjamin, for joining us for this particular episode.
Always
live in the studio. Alexandre E also joined us, and he wanted to know if they had the book in Amazon. I sent the link over. You can find the book on Amazon. You can find it on Pack Publishing on their website. So yeah, pick up the book, join the discussion, and catch us on the next episode of From Cover to Code.
Indeed. It will be on Thursday.
Oh, you know what? Did we change the day for next week? We probably did.
So yeah. So instead of Wednesday, it'll be Thursday.
Yeah. If you're catching us live, look for us. Same YouTube and LinkedIn channel.
Yes.
Different day, different time. And
we'll let you know.
Yeah. You'll see the updates and everything. And we'll see you then.
Thanks for joining us.
Bye.